USA Today bestselling author Jennifer Youngblood. Thanks for joining me today. I've received some questions from you guys, and I thought I would take some time to answer them and also talk a little bit about my writing process.
What is one of the most difficult plots that you've written?
Oh, that is a really good question. I think I would have to say it was from the Honeysuckle Island series. It was started out with Chasing Whispers and then led into The Fragile Truth. And a funny kind of little tidbit about this, it had been a while since I had written anything of that depth. And so when I wrote the first one, I kind of was like, okay, I'll write this and then lead it into the second one. Well, by the time I got to the second one, I was literally bawling because I was like, I don't think I can do this. And then, of course, I did. And I was really, really happy with the result. But it was tough.
Where did you get the idea for the Honeysuckle Island series, and what was the inspiration?
So I wanted to write something that had a little bit more depth. I wanted to go back and kind of combine the writing that I had done years ago when I first started writing with what I was doing at the present time. And so my husband and I went with some friends to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and then we decided to take a day trip, and we went to Bald Head Island, which is in North Carolina, but it's really just right on the border. And we fell in love with it. My husband found the area, and we kind of jumped in the car and went, not really knowing what to expect. Well, we took a ferry out to the island, and it just, lo and behold, they didn't have any of motorized vehicles that were allowed except for a few utility vehicles and police vehicles. And so everything was motorized golf carts. And it just looked like something out of a postcard. I just fell in love with it. And I thought, I have got to set a story here. And of course, one story turned into a series.
How many books are in the Honeysuckle Island series?
So there are 8 books total, and the series involves a family called the Chasing family. And I thought it was kind of neat. I mean, hey, shameless plug. I thought it was kind of clever to name the first one Chasing Whispers because it is about the Chasing family. And they are a very, very wealthy family and a very illustrious family. And they also have a hotel that they own, and it's set on Honeysuckle Island, and it's called the Oliver Hotel. And so I wanted to set it about this family and then all the things that would happen to them, and it also involves suspense.
One of your most beloved books is False Identity. Will you tell us a little about the inspiration behind that book?
You know, False Identity was my first attempt at writing commercially, and I have to admit that I was really worried. I thought, gosh, are my fans going to like this? And then surprisingly, they absolutely loved it. I wanted to write something that took place in Salt Lake City, Utah, in the Avenues. If you've never been to that area, it is absolutely beautiful. They have these big grand homes, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of something out of the South. And then also, I wanted to write something that involved homeless people. And so that was the inspiration to merge these two. And I really enjoyed getting into just the ins and outs of this book. It kind of took a life of its own, but it involves a woman named Chancey whose husband has passed away, and she's trying to raise her teenage son and her daughter, and Christmas is coming up, and she's having a really, really difficult time. And then she gets into it with her son. He storms out of the house, and he gets himself in a bad part of town, and he's rescued by this homeless man. And so in memory of his father, Travis takes the man home and kind of forces his mom, a polite way of forcing his mom into actually making this guy dinner. And that's when it starts. And of course, one of the taglines is, you know, never bring a homeless guy home, and especially never invite him to your family or invite him to have dinner. But this one is really, really suspenseful, and it has a lot of twists and turns. But it's also very hopeful. I have actually had people that have reached out to me that anyway, I don't want to give too much away about it, but there's a poem in this story, and it kind of leads throughout the novel. And one reader reached out to me and said she was so touched by this poem that she sent it to her brother who's in prison, and that really touched me. And so it really is a combination of suspense, family dynamics, and hope as well.
What was the motivation to incorporate the theme of homelessness into false identity?
Well, that's a good question. Sometimes it surprises me when ideas come. Sometimes I'm not even sure where they come from. But as I think back about this, the first time I really came in contact with a homeless person was when I was very young. I was a student at BYU Hawaii, and I went with some of my friends into Waikiki. And I remember seeing this lady, and we didn't know, we guessed that she might have been bitten by a dog, but we weren't sure. But I just remember seeing this lady, and she just had this horrible wound on her leg, and she was rummaging through the trash can to get napkins to put on her leg. And it just broke my heart to see that. And that is an image that has stayed with me. And as I was writing False Identity, that's something that I thought about. I thought about these people, and kind of as a writer, of course, I question, what brought these people to this state? How did they get to this point? And so that's something that made me explore this theme in False Identity.
What is a day in the life of a best-selling author really like? Is it all bonbons and binging Hallmark?
Well, I have to admit that I might eat a little chocolate, especially if I really get backed against a wall and I don't know where to go in with my next plot. But it's kind of interesting. I know a lot of people ask me that question. And one thing that I do a lot of is I do a lot of exercising when I get stuck. So I usually get up, take care of all the housekeeping items that I have to do with running a publishing company and being a writer. And then I actually have a certain spot set aside for writing. And it's wonderful because this is down in my basement and it's cool and I can go down. I don't hear the doorbell, and I can put my feet up and just write. And having a separate space set aside for that has really, really helped me mentally. But when I get in a jam and I get into, sometimes I'll get to have a little bit of writer's block. I often go for a walk or jog in my neighborhood, and that helps a lot. I have worked through many a plot exercising.
You've explored multiple genres in your writing. Which authors have influenced your journey, and how have they shaped the stories you tell today?
Oh, that's a good question. I started out as a reader. I have been reading my whole entire life, and of course, I love suspense, anything suspense. So it would make sense that I would enjoy writing suspense. Some of the ones I started out since I majored in writing and in literature actually in college. I've actually read a lot, and I would read a lot of the classics. One of my favorite is Nathaniel Hawthorne. I really, really, really enjoy his writing. He explored a lot about good and evil, and one of my favorite works of his is actually a short story, and it's called Rappaccini's Daughter, and it's kind of this twist on what you think is happening is not exactly what's happening, and I love that. I also was influenced. I mean, I probably like just a lot of people. I loved Gone with the Wind. I remember reading that, and I loved Scarlett O'Hara and her sauciness and her spunk. I thought that was just great. I remember reading that one when I was actually quite young. I think I was probably like 12 or 13 years old, and I really enjoyed that. I also enjoyed reading Mary Higgins Clark. I love a lot of hers, and I love the suspense, of course. And so I actually like reading a lot of different genres, and I actually like writing in different genres. It's kind of nice sometimes because I feel like that when I write several books in one genre, then I'll switch to give my brain a break, and it helps me to see things differently. And I read books in all genres because it just helps. I don't know, I just enjoy it more. It helps to give my brain a break from what I'm doing, and it helps me to enjoy what someone else has created.
Are you familiar with the short story, The Telltale Heart? And if so, what do you think about that type of writing?
Ooh, okay. That's an interesting. I'll have to kind of think about all those different. Yes, The Telltale Heart is a classic, Edgar Allan Poe. I actually love that one. I love that it's got the twist at the end. It's a psychological thriller, and that one is one of my favorites. I really like crafting villains. One of my sons always kid me about it, and my oldest son kind of kids me, and he says, "Well, just keep it on the page, Mom." And so we kind of laugh about that. But I really feel like that in a story, your hero is only as good as your villain or your threat. And so I do spend a lot of time crafting my villain because I want my stories to be rich and I want them to feel real.
You mentioned Nathaniel Hawthorne. What was your first introduction to Hawthorne, and why do you love his writing?
Well, my first introduction was The Scarlet Letter. And I think that I probably read that in high school. And I have to admit, it just really was not one of my favorites. It's actually very sad. And then I had to read him again in high school. I mean, not high school, but college. And then I think that's when I started liking him. My favorite Nathaniel Hawthorne, I really like Rappaccini's Daughter, which is a short story. But also, I guess my favorite novel of his is one that's not as widely known, and it's called The Marble Fawn. And it's a little bit similar to The Scarlet Letter, but I felt like it was a little bit more in depth, and I really enjoyed that one.
You write in multiple genres, and you use two different pen names. For example, Bonded and False Identity. Can you tell us more about that?
Sure. Okay, so False Identity is contemporary romance suspense, and that is actually the genre that I'm most known for. And I really love that. I mean, that is really my happy spot. The Shadowed is actually book 3 in a series that I'm working on right now, and I'm working on the prequel right now, and it's called Bonded. And then the books 2 and 3 are already out. And they are a fantasy. It's a paranormal romance Cinderella retelling. And when I first started this one, I really wanted to do a fairy tale retelling. And I think I thought, okay, it's simple, right? Like, I'll write a fairy tale retelling about Cinderella. Well, people who know me know that I don't do simple very well. And so it really became this involved story where it's a very rich, grown-up story. And it goes back and forth between the fairy tale world and the real world. I became fascinated with the television series Once Upon a Time, and that was kind of the inspiration. And so it really is a very involved story. And I do have some younger girls that really like it, but I would say mostly it's probably for 25 and up. Really the 35 between 25 and 35-year-olds really seem to love it. And I just think it's fun to explore different genres. I've absolutely loved writing the Grimlaw series, and I tell all of my regular readers, I'm like, hey, you'll still recognize me in it. There's lots of twists and turns. I try to do the character development. These characters have become so real to me. Kind of an interesting thing that happened that has never happened to me before. I had written books 1 and 2, and I was doing something else in the house, and I was thinking about the story, and I was like, gosh, I can't wait to find out what happens next to these people. They had become so real to me. And then I had to laugh because I'm like, okay, well, obviously I have to write the book to find out what happens. So I really would encourage, if you like fantasy, or even if you don't, give it a try. I think you would like it. Shadowed and the Grimlaws series is written under the pen name of J.L. Youngblood, which is obviously me. I'm Jennifer Lee Youngblood, and I'm very open about that. I just wanted to do a little bit of a separation because it is so different, and I don't want people who are used to reading my regular books to be upset, because there are actually some cliffhangers, and it does go very deep, and it does involve magic and world building. So I just wanted to separate those so that people would understand what they're getting with each series.
You've also had the opportunity to write rom-coms. Can you tell us about that experience?
So I wanted to write something to give my brain a break. I had been writing a lot of suspense, and I kind of wanted to try my hand at first person present, but I was very intimidated to do so. And it was so interesting because I have always heard writers say, oh, writing in first person is so easy. But for me, it just felt like a daunting process because I had spent years writing in third person past, which is kind of, I guess, what I most feel comfortable writing. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to try my hand at rom-com. And I decided to set it in the South, in Alabama. And of course, growing up in Alabama, this was fun for me because I'm very, very proud of where I grew up. And I grew up in this little bitty small town, and there's lots of gossip, lots of things going on. And so it just kind of felt natural for me to go there. And the name of the series is Good Girls Don't Come Last. And I started it, the first one is called Cold Feet. And I started it with a character named Albany, who reminds me a whole lot of my sister. If she's hearing this, she'll probably roll her eyes, but she's very sassy and she just has some really funny things that happen to her. So I just discovered that I absolutely love writing rom-coms, and I love writing in first person present. It's just a lot of fun. Those are a real treat to write.
What are the names of the books in the Good Girls Don't Come Last series?
Okay, so I hope I'm getting all these correct. There's Cold Feet, Practically Perfect, High Heels and Big Deals, Weddings, Lace, and Cake in the Face, The One-on-One on Love, and I think I got all 5 of those in there. I think that's right.